Okay, so this is.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry we're starting a little late. We had some technical difficulties. It is, what does it say? 6:03, and this is the Hand Wilbraham Regional School District Finance and Operations Subcommittee. We'll do a roll call here. So Mike Terabasi.
Here.
Michelle Boudreau.
Here.
Remotely. And Sean Kennedy, I am here as well. If we could stand and for the Pledge of Allegiance, that would be great. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, shoot, I didn't take my hat off.
Yeah,
Yeah, right,
everyone in
exactly.
town saw.
Yeah, I got it the first time, I didn't get it this time.
Right here, Michelle.
Oh, hey, Michelle. Good, she's good.
Did everything get?
Michelle.
Forgive me for.
Yes. Mark.
Oh, here? Yeah, I'm here. Right there.
Alright, cool. So, again, for the last meeting, I have this hat, I've been wearing it all day, so I didn't wanna take it off. I'm also getting better, but still a little under the weather. We're gonna go right into it. We're gonna discuss cost-cutting savings being done by the district. That's where we're gonna start each meeting from. Oh, very good, and we're,
The latest item we've added to the spreadsheet that's, I think, Aaron, we're getting that online, right? Or we're
Did you
gonna,
want it online? Yeah.
well, we can
I
do
was-
it in Google Sheets or something.
It
You
is on
have an
Google
Excel
Sheets, I
sheet
just
you
wanted
can
you to check it before I shared it.
Okay.
with everybody.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's okay.
But we do have a new grant for $25,000. It's a cell phone use grant, so you'll see a lot of districts are doing those pouches, things like that.
yeah.
We're not necessarily going the direction of the pouches, but we're looking at doing some counseling and support, some family outreach, particularly with kids who are repeat offenders of cell phone issues. We may buy some pouches as maybe a negotiated sort of agreement with some students, right? If we have students who are repeat offenders.
Right.
We're talking about a couple different ways to use that grant, but in many cases, that's money that districts are already spending, so that's money we'll sort of be able to do. It's almost, I mean, in many ways, dealing with cell phones has become an unfunded mandate, right?
Wow.
So we have to find a way to deal with their use. So now we're trying to, figure that out. So we have $25,000 to do that, which we think would be pretty powerful. And that's, I should say that that's a grant that Steve Hale wrote.
Oh, great.
I helped him get it through DESI, but Steve Hale should get the kudos for finding it, getting it going, and doing most of the writing work.
Great, kudos to Steve Hale.
Will that also be used for the middle school or exclusively for the high school?
I can talk to Steve about whether we can use it for the middle school too. Yep.
Oh, middle school as well?
Possibly, I don't know, but I think it's a district grant. Question mark.
Excellent, all right. With that, we have a preliminary budget, hot off the press for,
Thank you, sir.
oh, make sure we all got it, sorry. Excellent.
Alrighty, so good thing everyone's sitting already. So I guess what I'd like to do is start with the white page, the non-colored sheet page. One of the things we committed this year to doing is really trying to keep a pretty detailed list of the budget drivers, the items that are really driving our budget. So when we're talking about some of the, I'm not going to go through every one of these items, but I'll look at some of the big ones. Every school committee meeting we've been talking about electric. Our electric costs have gone up upwards of 20% this past year. We've really been fighting the cost of electricity.
Excuse me, Aaron, is that usage up as well, or just cost?
Cost,
Just cost?
cost, yep.
It'd be interesting to compare that.
We also,
Interesting to compare the usage.
this year, we also, knowing that the lighting issue had been resolved in 2023, I took our 2024 number down a bit. I was trying to, be responsible and say, I guess maybe I took it down too much, or maybe the lighting issue wasn't costing us quite as much as I thought. But I tried to do my best in being kind of an honest broker in that. Now we're really finding that we're over budget pretty consistently in electricity right now. And if you've seen any of the school committee stuff, I don't think it's gonna be as bad as what we have encumbered. But I think, we're definitely quite a bit over in there. A couple other items, natural gas and retirement this is pretty true to what we usually see in those areas. Retirement actually last year was up 9.5%, so 4.28% is a bit of a blessing. Technology, hardware and software. One of the things we've been asked to do is I had Chromebooks and projectors on our capital plan because we just had nowhere to put them. They've never been budgeted for one-to-one programming. We were asked to put it into our operating budget this year, and that's what I've done. So those two items, hardware and software. The software is to support one-to-one Chromebooks, so that's Securely software. It's one of many different brands of sort of security software. It allows teachers increased access and increased control on student Chromebooks. Health insurance, right now I'm projecting 3%. Scantic Valley, I don't know. Scantic Valley, I think, does Wilbraham and Hamden as well. They are doing pretty well. I'm really going to push. Last year I pushed to keep their increase to no more than 2%. I may try to push for 0% this year and ask them to use some of their reserves because this is going to be a tough year. But right now I'm only one vote in Scantic. So if you guys talk to your town treasurers or people like that, feel free to get me some votes. Boiler insurance, machinery liability. Our liability insurance went up $26,000 for fiscal '24, which is kind of a surprise to us. That had to do with the kind of ongoing cost increases we're seeing in everything, so inflation. So when you have liability insurance and building insurance, things like that, when things break, the insurance company that has to pay to fix them, and they're finding that their costs have gone up considerably. Vocational programming, you'll see that has a pretty significant increase based on the strategic plan. John pushed and got 9th graders into LPVEC. So in the past, we have only allowed 10th graders to go to LPVEC, which is kind of contrary to, is that even within state law to do? I don't.
We were probably the only ones in the state, I can imagine, who were doing it in 10th grade. It also was limiting the ability of our students to get into vocational programs because right now LVPEC is oversubscribed. So other schools were getting kids into shops in 9th grade, and then our kids had to pick from whatever was left over. So now they can compete on an equal footing with everybody else, but that means there's an extra year of tuition costs associated with that.
Vocational programming other, that is adding effectively 2 more spaces. We in the past have had about 3 students. This year we have 4, and I'm just predicting for possibly 1 more student to be enrolled in that. So I'm predicting for 5 spaces.
Can I go backwards for a minute?
Sure.
I want to go backwards too.
You want to go first?
You want to bet we're going to ask the same question?
Sure.
All right, we'll see if I'm going to ask the same question. So back to the vocational programming. So that's an increase because the 9th graders going over.
Yep.
Do we not have a cost, like a decrease in cost somewhere else? Because those 9th graders are at child left.
We're going to ask the same question.
I know it! Well, we both said we would go back. I bet we're going to ask the same thing.
What's the offset?
Maybe the 25% isn't as bad as it looks on here.
So one thing you have to realize is that Also, unlike most of the other vocational education programs in the state, LVPEC is a half-day program, so those students are still here for half a day. So it's, instead of getting their academic classes at the collaborative, which is the way most collaboratives are set up, they still do their academics here. So you don't really have that cost savings. On the other hand, the cost of education at LVPEC is much lower than it is at most other vocational schools because you're not being charged for the academic piece of it.
You would think you would have some offsetting costs.
Hmm.
Maybe not directly, but you think
We
there would
can
be
try
some.
to talk about that, I mean, it hasn't been something we,
I mean,
we're good there? So, collaborative special education programs have gone down, probably because if you look at our private, some of our private out of district and some of our, other costs have gone up, so a lot of our, contract costs and things like that on the other end have gone up. So it balances a little, but, you know, we were kind of glad to see that, you know, we've got some savings there. It almost matches our private out-of-district cost increase if you look at the very next line. So, you know, those two come out to be a bit of a wash. Buried within the budget will certainly be, you know, a bit of an increase to special education contracted services that have just been, continued to go up. So outside of sort of private out-of-district placements, we've had a lot of kids have to go to sort of 45-day placements to be evaluated. And those can be costly, and those come out of contracted services.
I don't know, was there any moderation of that out-of-district tuition increase that was projected at, I forget what the percentage was?
Excellent question.
14%, yeah.
Yeah, so as many of you know, the state approved a 14% increase for private out-of-district placements. So when we look at that, you know, private out-of-district programs, it would be considerably lower if not for that 14% increase. There is a reserve put aside by the state, and we are going to be applying for it. It's kind of up in the air what we'll get, if we'll get it. That the forms to fill out for that program come out in February, so we'll fill those out, we'll submit them. We're hoping, you know, we may be eligible for a little bit of money in that program. So that's going to dovetail. The state has a normal extraordinary relief program that they do in the spring, so this is going to dovetail with that program.
It's a very complex formula, which is why we don't know at this time. We thought it would be just like, okay, so tell us what your eligible costs are and we'll give you 14% or some number.
Right.
But it's not like that. It's,
Right.
you have to hit all these different thresholds of
It's more
spending.
like a Wizard of Oz behind the curtain.
Yes. Yeah.
So the easy way would be, you know, in a normal year, a typical OSD increase for special education costs for that might be 3%. So the difference might be 11% or even, let's call it 10%, right? And then we submit all of our sort of out-of-district private placement costs and they reimburse us that amount, basically. That's what we had hoped for. There are a lot of hoops to jump through just to be eligible. So we need a total increase of more than 0.5% of our required net school spending for the year, and no one understands why that's a gatekeeper. And then there are some other hoops in terms of the total impact it had year to year. So we'll work on that and see where we come.
This fund for extraordinary expenses is something that I assume every district is gonna be applying for, because every district was subject to the increase.
It'd be hard to imagine how someone wouldn't. I mean, it would,
Yeah.
you'd have to have a tremendous, well, I would guess at least 14% of your out-of-district kids coming off the rolls
Right.
in order to not qualify.
Yeah, so interestingly, John and I talked about this. If you're a district where somehow you manage to have a few kids age off of out-of-district programs, your amount might go down, but you are still subject to that 14%, right? I would argue that they should still be able to get that money back. But under this formula, right, if the increase is less than 0.5% of their net school spending, they won't be eligible for this program. So I find it, you know, it's kind of a strange way of doing it, because we were all impacted no matter what. It's, if you got lucky and a student, so sometimes you get lucky and you'll have a very high-cost student move out of your district. If you are subject to the 14% increase, all of your kids, you have 20 other kids who are still being paid for. Just because one kid moved out of district, you were still, again, you're still subject to the 14%, you should still get something back, right? Doesn't that make common sense? But that's not the way the state thinks of it, so. Yeah, so we're fighting a little bit of an uphill battle on that, but we'll do our best. Is that answered, or?
Well, it doesn't, yes.
I wish I had a
I think
more
that's all the
decisive
information
answer,
there is currently,
Yeah.
so.
yeah. Yep. So going down to the next item, past couple of years, 2 years, we've put $2 million of our E&D into the budget. So we, in order to, you know, stabilize the budget, preserve jobs, and meet some of the town's needs, of sort of $2.5 million that we had in there, we've spent $2 million. So we have we've put a little bit of money into it this past year. So we have $763,000. So it's going to be a tough year for E&D. And then another thing we used to help balance the budget was ESSER funds. We used $350,000 of that. I mean, these are both things I think we've talked about in the past few years, of that sort of fiscal cliff we're heading towards. And this is going to be part of that.
Can I ask one question? Before all the COVID money and all that kind of stuff, what was your average yearly E&D?
600 to 650,000
So
we're
we're
spending.
That-
So we held between $1 million and change and that $2 million number. It hovered in there. We had 2 very good years in COVID, because quite honestly, we had kids in out-of-district placements who weren't going to the out-of-district placements because of COVID. Their parents were keeping them home. So we managed to put money in, but now it's been 2 years since we've been out of COVID, in order to keep you know, budgets in line. And I think last year was kind of preserving jobs. There was John had proposed a 3-year transportation system, and that was kind of decided that wasn't really something that the district wanted to do. So we used E&D to kind of offset the difference in costs. So there have been a number of different factors. I mean, I'll say when Wilbraham cut our budget over the TWB issue, we had to go to E&D to cover that. We've been covering that for the past 2 years out of E&D. So those are all.
No, I just was wondering.
No, I'm
if
just
we
trying
were-
to give you the list.
Yeah, no,
of
I
things.
was just wondering if
It
we were
is
getting
what
back
it
to the
is.
normal number,
Yeah.
or less than the normal number, that's what
Yeah.
I was trying
So
to.
E&D certification right now is 763?
763, yep, that's what we're certified at. Yep. Down below is a more detailed accounting of some of the items above. So when we're talking about salaries and salary increases, this shows you where those all are. I think it's, you know, so as we're looking, we have a couple staff that would be coming off of the ESSER grants that we would like to preserve. So those are highlighted above. You'll notice that Sewell Road has a 9.06% increase, while Green Meadows has a pretty significant decrease. To explain a little bit of that, there was a program that moved from Green Meadows to Sewell Road, so that's just a swap of positions. There was also a position that moved from Green Meadows to Wilbraham Middle School to provide some more support for middle school students there. We've also reduced an assistant principal at Green Meadows, so if some of you have been following the school committee, our middle school at Green Meadows has evaporated almost. So much of the staff there has been able to sort of be reshuffled, and that's something we're going to be thinking about. So when we're providing this budget, we're also going to be thinking about what Green Meadows staffing is going to look like next year, and that will be factored into sort of version 2.0 of this budget. Think of that.
By the way, I don't think that 34.58% of that.
Doesn't,
Yeah,
it's all of them added up.
Yeah.
It's all.
So,
the
I'm
changes.
sorry,
It's
yeah,
two, it's
I'm
2.2
sorry.
It's 2.2 cents.
I'm sorry, yeah, you're right, my
The two
bad.
point two
My
seven
apologies.
is reflected
I-
on the line above.
Yeah.
So-
Right.
I wanna make sure,
Sorry.
because I looked at the numbers, you know,
Nope,
34.
Yeah, no, I used the sum function down there instead of carrying down the equation, my apologies. I did that somewhere else and I caught it, and this time I didn't catch it there, so. And the other is the two different types of major utilities by school. So electric and natural gas, I should tell you where we are per school. You know, interestingly, Stony Hill is the beneficiary of most of our solar credits. So you'll see their numbers are very low for electricity. That's not an aberration, it's just that's where all of our solar credits go.
Why do you do it that way?
I don't know, it's just the way I inherited it,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
They've had the occasional year where they have $0 electric bills for the year.
Why wouldn't it be like given to Minichog?
I think when they did it, it was just academic, Nitchog gets some too. I think it was kind of academic where the solar credits ended up and someone put them on Stony Hill back in the day. And I honestly, I couldn't tell you how to undo them, and I think, you know, thinking of it holistically, I'm not sure I wanna chase that down
But
with
it
my
matters.
limited hours.
Ultimately, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah, it all comes out of the same place. So with all of that gets
What
us
beautiful
kinda.
savings, huh?
Hmm?
What beautiful savings.
Yeah, yeah. So that gets us into the colored sheet that's on the next page, the next pages. This is what you're, I think, more familiar to seeing. Numbers have been updated. So the most recent numbers in the 25 column, 537 Hamden students, 2180 Wilbraham students, for 2,717 total Hamden Wilbraham students in the district. You'll note that's different from the total school students in the district because we have school choice students and we have METCO students in the district. I know that came up and I know I fumbled with that a couple times and Christina answered that correctly for me, so I want to make sure to get that out.
The gift that keeps on giving right there, right, Doug? The split?
So the split moves a little bit more towards Wilbraham again this year.
When's the last time it's not moved towards Wilbraham? 7, 8 years ago?
Prior to the litigation.
Prior to the litigation?
I find it really interesting that the students split, but if you look at the populations of the town, the two town populations have remained steady at a 75-25 split, like, over years. That hasn't budged,
Yeah.
but the students have. Yeah, that's just, I thought it was interesting.
Yep, it is interesting.
Sometimes I like to look at interesting.
The one wild card in some of this is minimum local contribution in the past few years has floated back and forth. A couple years ago, there was a big shift in minimum local contribution towards Wilbraham, and that created sort of a big budget shift for Wilbraham. Last year, it shifted back a little bit. And Bill and I looked up all into the calculation of minimum local contribution, and the best we could come up with, there was a massive increase in the income in Wilbraham, in the multiple hundreds of millions. Someone who won the lottery moved to Wilbraham, and their winnings came in just as they moved to Wilbraham.
I hear
So-
they're interested in booster clubs.
Yeah, so therefore, yeah, so someone into the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars. So it shifted, it could shift back. There are two major factors in minimum local contribution. There's total property value in each town, and that gets into property taxes. Then there is total income within the community. So you take all the residents of the community, take all the income, and that basically helps the state defines your ability to pay based on those two major metrics. There are a few other factors, but those are the big ones. You know, it's interesting because, I mean, the town doesn't gain really much benefit from income. The town doesn't collect income tax, so income doesn't seem like it would be, but property tax is where you generate from, right? So property value might be a factor, but I'm not sure how income is a factor. So that may shift around.
Also includes tax exempt properties, which is
Yeah.
also interesting.
Correct. So I have taken a guesstimate at chapter 70. We're in a hold harmless situation. Different people. We've had a decline in students. And chapter 70, even though it goes up by upwards of 5% a year, it's very much by student count, so it's a per student basis. And when you're a district that's lost 1,000 students over the past 15 years, your per student basis doesn't get you up to earning any more chapter 70. So you're kept in what's called a hold harmless. You'll never get less chapter 70 than you did the prior year. So we're constantly in this perpetual state. The legislature and the governor have always supported giving every district at least $25 to $30 per pupil. The prior norm was 25, the new norm seems to be about 30. So I'm guessing that we're going to get $30 per student in new chapter 70. But on a percentage basis, that's less than 0.5%, and it's 1/3 of our aid. So we're thinking about the budget and what's gonna end up on the towns, right? If 1/3 of what we're getting only goes up by 0.5%, if our budget is going up by 2%, the towns then have to make up that difference, right? So it's very challenging. So in the pink, and I probably should give out the colors for people who might be new to this. The pink is net school spending requirements. We're well above our net school spending requirement, so there's a minimum net school spending that we have to meet. So that's not really a real big factor in all of this. So then the next section, the sort of orange section, is our offsets. I am predicting, at least for now, we're gonna get at least 1.65 million in transportation reimbursement. I'm fingers crossed, hoping it will be better. There are two factors: our total transportation cost that goes into that. Our total transportation cost between 23 and 24 was pretty flat. The state took, in 24, took transportation reimbursement up to 90%, which was a bit of a welcome surprise to us. My hope is they'll do it at 90% again, in which case we will get probably 100,000 more. So if you look, we get about 1.735 million in fiscal 24. If they keep it at 90%, I predict we get that much. So when cherry sheets come out, that's when I'll change that. Medicaid funding, we're getting back up to the levels we were pre-COVID. So Medicaid reimbursement is a method of funding. We get money directly from Medicaid for the work that we do in the schools: occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech language pathologists. That kind of collapsed during COVID, so our ability to do some of that work was very limited when kids were either remote or in the schools only half the time. So we're back up to sort of the level it was. I'm hopeful we may get towards, for future years, I'm hopeful we may get closer to 300,000 in the coming years, but I don't want to predict that for this year. And then interest, interest had leveled off for a while. I'm hoping maybe we can bring that number up. I'm going to look at what we get for interest last year and some of the rates we're getting. We might be able to creep that up a little bit, but that's not a really big factor. So I'm hesitant to say I want to, jack that way up. But we're getting much better interest rates than we were getting previously. So down below, you get into sort of our total expected transportation costs in that next green section. Then this is sort of the total offsets. The purple is sort of the total of all of the above, that 43 million. Our total budget, I'm projecting at the 55 million right now. Again, we're going to keep working on that. This is a process of me picking away at the budget for the next month or so, month and a half, 2 months. So then we get into what assessments for the towns will look like. And that's where we get into some numbers that are pretty significant. So Hamden's looking at, a total of 8,518,370 using these numbers, 9.49%. Wilbraham at 29,521,660, at 11.85%. You know, like I said, there's other factors, there's other things that remain to come in. You know, if we push on health insurance, if we can work on what's happening at Green Meadows and a few other things, we can bring that down a bit. Down below at the bottom are, I think, the only capital item in Minichog for this year, and I'll double check that. It's not NMRHS, it's MRHS, that's Minichog. And you'll recall there's an email back and forth with Don Davenport. There was a small error in my calculation last year for capital. I had done the full district for the splits for the Minichog capital, and it really should just be the students in Minichog. So I've corrected that here. You'll see down below using actual calculation for Minichog. I think the total error was a little over $1,000. It wasn't a huge issue. And somehow we want to address that.
I didn't know it was a different percentage from the
I thought it was
school.
from the original,
Yeah, I had thought it was too.
the origination of the school.
Yeah, Don was correct in reading.
It's
the
not
original.
75-25?
Well,
No, it's not from the original. It's at the time of that capital
and
assessment.
it's only the kids in the high school, it's not the entire district
Yeah.
portion. It's just the portion of the kids in the high school in terms of the capital projects for the high school.
Yeah.
It's a very arcane, in the weeds kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, I missed that, and if, you know, I guess my hope would be if.
You and a lot of other people prior to all of us,
Yeah,
so.
may have, so, you know, we can talk about, you know, putting that $1,000 back in one way or the other, if that's a factor, and, you know, I wanna, if we need to make it right. So that's kind of where we're standing right now. And I don't, you know,
$4.5 million increase for both towns. A little bit of work to be done.
It's preliminary.
I get it, I get it.
It's preliminary.
When is the governor's budget, when is the governor's budget coming out this week, right?
I'm hoping next week.
I was told it was this week.
Yeah.
I'm not,
I'm
Not
hoping
sure.
by next week.
Okay.
I'm sure they said this week.
and then you can define these a little, you
Yeah,
can dial this a
everything
little
will
bit
find a
more.
little better. Our next Scantic Valley meeting, I can't remember the date, but it's gonna be mid-February. That's when we'll get health insurance rates. That'll be a factor.
So
This
what's the real
doesn't,
big driver on this? I mean, we started with the drivers, so we got a $4.5 million increase for the towns, plural.
big decrease, so you're looking at, you know,
Salaries.
$637,000 in lost revenue. That's a big factor.
637 in lost revenue?
Yep, that's revenue that.
That's
we
the
won't
second
have.
table on this first
Yeah,
one.
second, yeah. Second.
And that's largely because of ESSER dollars?
Well, we've spent our E&D, right, we've spent down our E&D to do a number of things,
Oh,
and ESSER's going away. So that's about little, I mean, ESSER's a little more than half of that. You know, then, you know, salaries are going up by the usual amount. Moving Chromebooks and classroom technology, you're talking $250,000 right there. So if you look at the major budget changes right in the middle, district technology, those are pretty significant. You know, some things are just completely out of our control, electricity. You know, we're looking at $101,000 in electricity. Vocational programming, $100,000 in vocational programming.
well, that wasn't beyond our control, that was within our control, we chose to do that.
No, I'm going through the line, I mean, I'm
Okay,
saying there
yeah,
are things,
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, okay.
yeah, I mean, yes, I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
mean, some things are out of the, you know, district technology, I mean, we could eliminate the one-to-one program at the middle school and high school, and that number would go away.
I was gonna ask you, is that the only, so it's just the middle school and high school that are one-to-one?
Middle school and high school are one-to-one. Our
With the
hope
Chromebooks,
is,
you mean the one-to-one?
Chromebook,
That's Chromebooks you're talking about.
yeah.
so that's, about 440 Chromebooks a year that we'll have to buy. So we're figuring about 220 kids, and what our intent is, so sixth grade, it'll be about 220 kids, ninth grade, it'll be about 220 kids. Chromebook life cycles are about 5 years, and our intent would be to take those Chromebooks once they age out of the middle school or high school, and those would become part-based units at the elementary schools. So as we increase the use, everywhere the increase of Chromebooks is increasing, so that would sort of offset any need to increase anything at the elementary schools. So we're not asking anything more for increased Chromebook usage at the elementary school, because we think we can have them fall down to the elementary school once they age out of the middle and high school.
But the one-to-one program can't go away, because there'll be a huge inequity among the students, because big bunch of students, families will buy them Chromebooks, some of them better than others, none of which will have any of the school security stuff on it, right? Right now, you have a lot of control over the Chromebooks, where they can go on
That's
the
what the
various
security-
places of the internet and stuff,
That's right.
because they're the school Chromebook. That'll be lost, the kids can pull up any websites they want,
Yeah.
potentially, and then there'll be some students who won't have access to Chromebooks.
Well, I think the real struggle over the next few months is going to be, I mean, I don't think the town's gonna bear a $4.5 million increase. I don't think towns have that ability to bear that. So I think the question's gonna be in prioritizing how, and this is very early, and I get that. But I'm just trying to make sure we're all talking about this up front and being very direct about it. I mean,
Fair enough.
you got some major issues here. And we have to figure out ways to, and I understand your point, like, but, I mean, at some point, you're gonna have to say, you're gonna have to do away with something that you don't wanna do away with, I promise you that.
There are two things I want to say about the Chromebooks before we move on. One thing I want to say about vocational. One is, not only that, but our curriculum is delivered by computer at this point. We've moved away from textbooks, it's mostly subscription based, so without Chromebooks, we couldn't operate, essentially. And the other thing that I want to say about that is, this was moved into the operating budget kind of as a result of conversations we've had about capital, about we need to get this in here, and then maybe have to be an adjustment. Maybe we have a conversation about when that adjustment takes place, but it has to at some point, in my opinion. What I want to say about the vocational is, isn't it more accurate to say 140,000, because you've got 100 for or 101 for LVPEC and 39 for
Yes.
other, so 140, so we put those both together.
Is there any precedent for, like, there be an optional program for parents to purchase a Chromebook for their student if they wanted to, some kind of order process where they can put in and, maybe the kids get to pick from different colors, or, you know how sales and marketing goes, right? I mean, almost like it's a fundraiser.
Yeah.
And then any students who didn't have Chromebooks purchased for them, school would provide them. So there wouldn't be inequality among students. In other words, every student would have a functioning Chromebook that was good for all their studies, but there might be a large number of families in town that might choose to spend $300 on a Chromebook that, maybe their student's name could be engraved on, or,
But then there you go, you're setting it aside and you're creating a different system. Oh, you have the Hello Kitty
Yes.
Chromebook, and you get.
which has nothing to do with the educational
Right, I know,
value.
but you got the government cheese, I mean, it's,
You may also run into the argument of people saying, well, we just bought a new MacBook, so I'll just have them use that instead, and
Right.
it's, instead of a Chromebook, we already have it, so.
To answer your question, there is precedent in my experience. In Northampton, we did that for a while before we ended up funding them for all of the students. But the rule there to get away from these problems is, this is the device. If you want to buy the device, you can buy the device, and the benefit is when your student graduates, you keep it. That's really the only perk beyond it. So it was the same thing, it was managed by the school, it had securely on it. It was just, if you want to have this. I'll say it wasn't very well subscribed to, because by the time you graduate, your Chromebook's pretty much fried.
Yeah.
Um,
And maybe the spin too is.
So they would have the option to buy a new one for their kid as a freshman in the high school,
Yeah.
and then that would be theirs, and then they would keep it when they
So
graduate.
maybe part of the spin is help us with our budget, right? I mean, it's almost like a fundraiser, buy your own, can you buy your own, so we don't have to furnish it, and therefore, I mean, I don't know, that's not exactly how you frame it, but you don't get it, right? Yeah.
You had mentioned, so on the Scantic Valley decrease, you mentioned, Green Meadows. What has to happen there, reallocation of staff?
Yeah, so, I mean, we have staff budgeted there to support a middle school that all of it doesn't exist. So there's certainly a few staff that we can think about moving around as things change. The real challenge is going to be if we make a commitment to do that, and then all of a sudden, every middle schooler wants to stay at Green Meadows next year, right? Then we have an issue. So I guess there's some concern, you know, if particularly the fifth graders going into sixth grade, who will now be middle school students, even though we've had almost every student from the other classes, if this particular class has a different mindset about staying, we could end up having to have a full sixth grade there and then staff that full sixth grade is a challenge.
So I was thinking that sort of those positions would be eliminated, not reabsorbed or reallocated to another.
The say what?
The positions that were.
Yeah, those
talking about, they
positions,
wouldn't be reabsorbed.
yeah, those wouldn't necessarily
Okay.
be needed elsewhere, right? We've moved, the positions that might be needed elsewhere are elsewhere right now.
Okay,
So those are positions that could, and many of the individuals have even already moved, so in some cases, we're just holding a place marker.
Over to electricity,
Yep.
another place where we have a huge increase. I mean, is there any opportunity to extend our solar capacity?
Beyond where we are now, not in the immediate. I mean, that's a long term, we could look at that over the next few years and see if there's anything we can buy into. I can see if Mike has the ability to do that.
Like, can
We were
solar
talking about
cells be
this.
put on the roofs
Weren't
of
we?
any of the
Or was it this
buildings?
meeting?
I mean, between all the school buildings, we have a lot of square footage. Most of the schools do not have trees anywhere near them. And, I mean, you know, if there's an ability to go into a partnership or something, I mean, I'm just looking at the things that are big price increases that, you know, we can't, you know, anyway.
I think we were talking about.
So most of the solar credits we get are credits from solar farms, not necessarily, we do have solar on this roof. And we could look at
Like, we
others.
just put a brand new roof on top of the middle school not very long ago, right? So, you know,
Conversation we could have,
you know,
see if there's anyone interested.
maybe, right, if an electric company wanted to partner with us, we let them put the cells on the roof, and then we get discounted, and maybe that could be more than an insignificant
Sure.
savings.
We can look at that.
I think we were also, at one point, we looked into parking lots. If you had covered parking lots with solar on it, but I think what we found was at the time, the cost effectiveness wasn't
Well,
there.
that's a lot more expensive, because you have
Right.
to build the frames to hold them
I'm
up.
just saying, we were looking at all different options.
It's super nice, because you don't
Yeah.
get snow on your car.
Yeah.
Like, this time of year, it's super nice, but you have to build, you know, like what they did over at Smith & Wesson,
Yeah.
right before they decided to move out of the state.
Yeah, we can look at all of that, it's just not something that I think is gonna impact this year's budget, right? It's gonna be something that would get installed probably next year at best.
But I'm in it for the long haul, and
Yeah.
electricity increases is something that's been happening pretty steadily every year.
Right.
So,
Right.
like I know there's not a lot we can do with what's smacking us in the face, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be planning for what's happening 2 or 3 years down the road.
I will say that Gina Roy and I have talked in detail about our out-of-district placements, We do have, at the end of 2025, we have a significant number of out-of-district students that will be aging out. So it is our hope that if we get through this next year, that as long as, again, knock on wood, because more students can go out, we may have some savings in out-of-district. So for 2026, we're hopeful that we'd have some savings in out-of-district. And circuit breaker, depending on how familiar you are with it, it's a reimbursement program. So we would get money based on our 2025 numbers to help support the 2026 budget. So that would be a sort of a double benefit for us. So we'd have a revenue increase plus a decrease in costs that would be beneficial. I mean, again, we're being a little speculative, it's a little further out. But I think as we talk about that, we're talking about hopefully, crossing fingers, the ability to do something for 2026.
Quick question for you. Line 11 on the colored sheets.
Yep.
School choice tuition.
Yep.
It says included in budget. Could you
Yes.
explain that, please?
So 2 years ago, what was happening is it basically, by having it on this page, it meant we had to spend that full amount regardless of whether we needed it. And this came at the time, as you'll recall, we ended up giving a lot of money back to the towns. However, when we got to end of year and we talked to our auditor, they said because it's on this front page, you can't decrease your choice, you have to use exactly that amount. So what we did is we moved it to the budget offset line that's within our budget. So there's $835,000 that used to sit here that is now sitting in our budget that offsets the budget. Okay. It's a little academic, but when it's sitting sort of behind the veil, as it were, it gives us a little more flexibility in how we use that money.
Okay.
So it didn't
It
go
doesn't
away.
mean we're not
Didn't
using
go
it,
away,
and
it's
I'll
just-
be, completely transparent in the amount we use. And that certainly, I will share that in sort of our version 2.0 when we talk about it next time.
Now the good news?
No, now the even worse news. So the cost of the configuration update. So the reconfiguration of the schools is going to have a short-term cost before we reap the benefits of such configurations. And that's what we're talking about right now. Why don't you take us there?
So, I don't have that in front of me, I apologize, but there's, did you have it a moment ago?
I got everything that we had.
You don't know what the new configuration is going to be, do you?
Well, that was, so
No.
I think,
Did
and
you
I
have it?
apologize,
We're
I
still
didn't
waiting
have
on the
that.
planning committee to meet, so they can give us recommendations, but they've not met. They've,
We did meet.
oh, you did meet?
Yes.
Friday.
Came up with
Yeah.
options.
Oh,
That's
so
right.
what's the top recommended?
So, yeah, I'm sorry, John just shared with me
Which I know has to be
today that
voted
it's
on by the
option
school
2 that they're looking to, option 2.
Which
We're
is
looking-
What's option two?
Option 2 was at a vote of 3-1, is being sent to the.
Right, tell them what it is.
Yeah.
Tell them what
Is it the one with the
they don't know.
flamingos?
Just give me a
in front of
second,
high
give me a
school?
second, everybody. I'll give all the information. And that is the one where it's neighborhood schools at Stony Hill and Sewell Road. TWB closes. Wilbraham Middle School is 6 and 7, and Minichog Regional High School 8 through 12. Green Meadows will be pre-K through 5, and Isle Tree will be K through 1, and then, like I said, 2 through 5 in Stony Hill and Sewell Road.
But that won't,
Stony
does the
Hill
pre-K
will
go?
have 3
Huh?
per grade,
Green Meadows.
and Sewell Road will have
Full
4 per
district.
grade.
And
And
recommended
the
will be
cost of
67.
that relocation is $838,150. Upfront, but then with long-term,
Only
Wait,
today,
even
it's
the
only
first-
today.
That's
It's
special.
not, that's not a
It's
final
24
price, that's like today.
that's
Right.
what?
We don't know what it's
Option
actually
two,
gonna
the
be,
total,
You know, at the time
Right.
when
So, yeah, all this is like now
To
money.
be
It doesn't
fair.
include-
Wait, but
it
that's
doesn't
the
include
cost,
of
but
the
there's
middle school
also,
library.
there's an operational savings, right? That
Yes.
So,
That even lessens that in the first year.
yeah, so option two.
That's true.
Hold on.
Correct, so it's not
Yes.
it's not an $800,000 check, I think it's more
Yes.
like a $300,000 or $400,000
Yes,
check.
so option two's total moving cost, I'm sorry, I think, is $437,950. There are,
That's different than what I have here.
Which one's lower?
But there's good news.
where? You have,
This isn't
sorry,
gonna happen
438,
for the
150.
next year.
Right.
It's,
438,150, sorry, this might
whatever
be
the
an
cost
over.
is, it's
What?
being put off of it.
438,150.
What's 438,150?
438,150 is the total moving costs, but coupled with that are operational savings. So there's some savings in year one, operating expenses, and I'm sorry, the final version, I didn't realize we were having exactly this conversation far enough in advance. The total year one budget impact, as I have it, is in the $80-some thousand range. Right, because we're gonna have operational savings, we're gonna have expenses, net of choice, and then we're gonna have some choice impact. So our net budget, I think this one's one of the older versions, but it's in the $80 to $90,000 range.
Now, this would require the amendment of the regional agreement.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what do you think of timing on that?
Can I just say one thing before answering that question? That is a little bit low, because one of the things we realized is that we didn't include costs of rebuilding the middle school budget. Rebuilding the middle school library. One of the
Yeah.
main benefits of getting those students out of the libraries, middle schoolers could have a library, but that will take some money too, because that whole thing's been exploded if you've been in there lately.
And those are all 26
The library
costs,
is
so-
3 rooms right now, separated by partitions.
Yeah.
2 classrooms and then 1 that's left over of the library.
Yeah.
So for timing, the planning committee met on Friday, made some recommendations. I'm sure this will be on the next school committee meeting.
February 1st.
So I'm not sure, but I would say in the next few school committee meetings, there'll probably be a vote, and then it would go to the towns for the spring town meetings. And then,
Spring this
yeah,
year?
and then if it was approved, next year would really be sort of our getting ready to do it year. We might be able to start the move, that might be able to mitigate,
Yeah.
mitigate some of the moving costs by spreading them out over 12 months. We might be able to use some of our own staff to a greater extent. But
So you're,
it'll definitely hit for the next fiscal
so
year.
you're expecting the cost, the net cost to be somewhere $80,000 to $100,000 year one?
A little bit more because we have to add the cost for the library.
Why jacked up to 100?
I think 20 is low for a
Maybe
library.
120, maybe it gets towards 120.
Yeah.
You know, keep in mind, the sooner we know what we're doing, the more we can mitigate the cost by doing some of the work ourselves. You know, the speed at which we have to move, so I mean, we're already talking about moving some of the chess pieces around the board now, but the sooner we know and we can start moving the chess pieces, the more we can mitigate this cost and do some of it ourselves as sort of summer work, or, you know, even little bits of work here and there.
So I'm gonna harp on this a little bit, because I talked a little bit about it last time. So we're gonna ask the town, the residents to spend $120,000 to make this reconfiguration change, which I understand. How are they gonna know if it was worthwhile?
How you know what?
How are they gonna know if it was worthwhile? How are you gonna measure success?
So, you know, one of the things that we talked about in response to that last time, I think, is we have a number of metrics that we use to measure student success. There's something I call an accountability report that I do every.
I'm not necessarily looking for me, I'm just thinking, it's a
Right,
rhetorical
no.
question right now.
And I'm just
I think that's
kind
really
of
Giving
giving
more along the lines when we present it to the town. We
Yeah,
gotta
it's
tell
a
this is
really
how we're doing it.
rhetorical question right now, but I think we need to have some key measurements, saying, here's how we're gonna measure the success of this program, of this.
Yep. And I'm just kind of saying it for the record right now. I know that may be a
Yeah.
question for the record.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that we need to do is make sure when we explain this to the town, that we need to provide adequate time for us to realize the benefits, you know? I would think that in the first year, there's going to be a lot of upheaval and likely to be some regression as people get used to their new environments, new ways of doing things. Some of the first plans we have may not be effective plans, that might have to be changed. So I think you're looking at more of a 4 or 5 year timeline than a 1 or 2 year timeline to realize the benefits.
I think that's all fair. I just think we need to be
Yeah.
really, really clear in this so people understand they're making an investment. We need to, and too many measurements is just as bad as having no measurements, right? I mean, we need to be clear in identifying we're improving.
Fair enough.
Well, it's a tall mountain in front of us.
Yeah. I think we gotta tackle the first mountain this year.
But, thinking about it in the macro view, and we've known this was coming. We knew the federal money was gonna be drying up on, both the school and the town side. That's not news, and sure enough, it's happening. And it's gonna result in some difficult choices on the town level between the school budget and the town budget. And on the district basis, it's gonna be a big discussion about what we want the schools to look like, both in terms of the configuration and the cost. This is a big.
And I'm concerned from at a town level because Wilbraham took a significant
Right,
increase
yes.
last year. And people have been very, and now the tax bills are hitting and people are really getting upset. And I'm worried that I'm wondering how it's gonna be received this year. Not only by the residents, but by the players involved.
Right. Just it was just brought up, Wilbraham Middle School would technically then become a regional district property, right? So, but right now, we're working with the town attorneys to figure out how that happens, how that works, and such like that. So that means that all the future costs for Wilbraham Middle School would be
Capital
district
costs.
capital cost, yeah.
I mean, that would have to be the direction that,
Right,
I mean, Wilbraham owns the building, they'd have
right, oh,
to,
yeah, yeah.
they'd have to wanna do that.
Just as a word of caution, I would caution you about approaching capital this year with significant capital improvements into the building. If we're looking at turning it over in a year from now, just as a
We'd
side note.
We'd like to see you do a lot of capital.
I know you would. I know you would. I would just be very careful about that because you don't wanna, if it's no longer being Wilbraham property in upcoming years, you don't wanna bury the Wilbraham taxpayer with their saddle, I should say, with the cost of that right now.
Fair enough.
Well, thank you for the heads up. Appreciate the early warning.
Yeah. We had better news.
It's just fine, you're still working on it, right?
It's been a slow moving train, and I think, I hope we were clear about the fiscal stuff, right? That this was coming.
Are you able to attend a FinCom meeting on February 7th?
Possibly.
That'd be worthwhile. That was discussed at the last finance meeting. I'm saying, yeah.
Which time?
Yeah, it's a Wednesday. I think it was February 7th they talked about.
It's a Wednesday, it's at 7?
Well,
This is your personal finance committee.
Yeah, I don't think we need everybody there, but I think we'd like to begin the discussion with the entire finance committee so that we don't, Todd and I just don't be messengers and they hear it right from you and you do a better job of explaining it than we do. so.
And if you don't get the budget numbers and we're coming to them with 4.5 and we really think it's gonna be a 3.5 or something a lot lesser,
Mhm.
then postpone it. You know what I mean? Don't come and say
Well-
4.5 if the numbers, if the
So-
budget, the mass budget's
Yeah.
done in.
Yeah, if I can pick away, so I always say, this is my first pass at it, right? And we're gonna pick away at this.
Cause it'll be a shot. It'll
To be
shot.
clear,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean,
the discussion around this was, let's meet early like we did last year, and we'll probably have to have another set of meetings as we get closer to
Yeah.
this. But at least let's get it out there like we're doing today, so that everybody can kinda
Yeah.
begin to formulate some ideas and.
And part of the savings, report that we do, what we cull out of here the savings that we make here, I also wanna include that as well.
I did just share that with everybody earlier in the meeting on the
Say again?
spreadsheet. I did share the spreadsheet of the cost-cutting savings.
Excellent.
Got the
Mark,
7th on
is
my
that
important
7 o'clock
calendar,
in the
my
evening?
wife's.
It's actually at
Really?
6:30 at the police station.
Okay, 6:30 at the police station.
And we could refine the time and everything, I mean, if, you know, I mean, I'll talk to Kevin. Probably get you guys in first, so then nobody else. I don't think there's anything else on the agenda that night, that's the reason they chose that.
I'm pretty sure I can be there, good, on my
Thanks.
calendar now.
Yeah.
And my important on my wife's.
Yeah.
Right, where are we on the agenda here? Scheduling the next, did anyone else have anything they wanna talk about the cost reconfiguration update or the preliminary budget numbers? Everyone good?
I don't know if
Not,
anyone's good.
not good, but yes.
I don't think anyone's good, but I think they're
So,
done.
I'll ask something might come up, is closing TWB closed, or still having the programs in there?
Closed.
Close.
Okay.
But that's gonna be part of the reconfiguration.
They're talking about turning it back to the town.
Turning it back to the town.
If the town wants it.
I know, that's a discussion.
That's a separate
I was
discussion.
under the impression that there was a desire.
Right, but, I mean, we have a lease with them, and if they don't wanna take it back,
I
that's.
will say what Craig said, which was perfect, worry about the kids first, and then we have to deal with it.
Yeah,
That's what Craig said.
fair enough.
Yeah.
That was perfectly said.
Excellent. Next meeting. Are we, on the, starting in February, are we on the, twice a month?
We can do twice a month, I just can't do the 5th, unfortunately. It's a no starter for me, but I could.
I'm out of
Yeah,
town on the
if
fifth
they-
anyway.
So let's do the
We
fifth.
talked to this on
Definitely the fifth.
If the governor's, if the governor's budget does come out this week, I mean, I could do January 29th, but I don't know if we wanna kinda roll the dice on that. But then we could do
You're
the
better off
12th.
scheduling it and then canceling it than doing it the other way around.
Yeah,
But
why
we
don't we
could do
do
the
that?
I
12th
could
to the
totally
20th.
do January the 29th.
All right,
the
so
No,
we'll
don't we
say,
have something the 29th there, and can we just look something?
I got nothing.
no, we
January
did not,
29th?
we said the 14th.
No, not,
Budget meeting, I'm doing,
The
with
12th.
he's
with
doing a budget,
principals and
forget it,
stuff,
yeah.
yeah, principals and stuff, but I could do January 29th. At the very least, we can take a look at some of the things we talked about.
Doesn't need
I
to be-
might not have governor's numbers, but. if-
Doesn't need to be on Monday either, does it? Does it have to be on
No.
Monday? I mean, yeah.
No, I think for some reason that was the most
No, I
preferred.
get it, but I think once you get that governor's budget out, you wanna get the more accurate numbers.
Well, wait a second,
Yeah.
29th is only a week from now.
Right, the
Is
budget.
that,
It's
is
6
that enough
months.
time then?
Huh?
If it comes
Yeah,
out.
It's-
I genuinely though don't think the budget, governor's numbers are what's gonna turn this thing. I mean, if we can get, minimum local contribution, which comes out, that does come out around the same time, that'll be a factor, but that's just how it's split between the towns. The total number, which is the bigger issue, I think is gonna come from some of the other things we talked about, health insurance, right? If we can keep that down a little bit, if we can look at Green Meadows, if we can look at some other things, those might be the better hitters.
I mean, how much do you think you have to close this gap?
Hmm?
I mean, you got nearly a $4 million increase, or the
Mhm.
ask rate today is, how much
Yeah.
are you speculating you're gonna need to close? How much are you gonna have to remove out of that budget?
Well, I don't know how much we can, I mean, that's gonna be, I think we're gonna end up with a gap somewhere, and we're gonna have to make some decisions. I mean, we're not the only district, if you look at the news, Northampton and Amherst are both projecting at least $2 million shortfalls, and
I don't
that's
know,
probably, I mean, that's probably where we're sitting right now, right? If you're talking 4 million, maybe the towns in the past have come up to 2 million between the two years, something, so, I mean, we're sitting in the same place, plus we've got a little room to give right now, we're talking about.
It's fair, I always think, I can't imagine us giving more than we did last year, and I'm not sure we can get to where we were last year.
Yeah.
That's kind of what so I mean, you're talking about $1 million, you're talking about $2 million minimum
Fair enough.
that you gotta
Mhm.
cut out of this somehow or another. Again, I'm just speculating, I'm not saying what.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
4% of the budget, I mean, how are we gonna,
Yeah.
right?
There's, I mean, and there's not many places to take it from.
Well, part of the problem in here is you still have some people or some positions that exist when ESSER dollars existed. That came into
Yes.
being because of ESSER. That's not, I don't know if that's a tremendous amount, but it's probably $200,000.
Yeah.
Maybe more. I mean, those are the kind of things you need to start thinking, and I don't wanna tell you how to do it, but that's the way I would look at that. At least begin some of those, and there's gonna be no magic wand, it's gonna be a bunch of little things, quote unquote, not little.
Yeah, but then we have to balance out the fact that people wanna see, you know, our test scores get higher and they wanna see education improve, but it's like, you know, spend less money but educate better,
No,
you know?
spend more money, Sean. I mean, you're talking, we have never spent less money.
Right, no, you're right.
And we've got a number of things in here that are strategic plan based, right? And that's something that
Yeah.
I feel like we committed to, right? Not just as a district, as a community. That was a pretty big effort.
You know, we did announce that the strategic plan would cost, and, yeah,
Yeah.
unfortunately, asking for cost increases in this climate is,
Yeah.
Well, you're gonna ask for an increase, there's no doubt about that, I don't think anybody's challenging that, it's just
Yeah.
how much of it.
how much of an increase, right?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's challenging that.
No,
But
I
mean,
understand.
We basically about doubled the increase last year of what we normally do. I can't imagine us doing that again, but I might be wrong.
Given everything coming together with this and the Minichog capital and the other stressors on the town, has there been any discussion at the town level as to whether timing is right for 2.5 override? It's been a few decades at least. Seems like needs to happen every once in a
Hampton
while.
hasn't had a discussion, we wouldn't need one, we have a lot of room in our levy limit.
No, I know that, I know that. I appreciate you listening to me, but I know the bigger problem is on Wilbraham, right?
So it was interesting, we have room as well, and we recently got a report from the treasurer. It's actually on the state website, but it illustrated where Wilbraham stood, or where Hampton stood in the like, you know, but you still gotta raise the taxes. Still gotta raise the taxes, and Wilbraham was shockingly, Hampton was in better shape than Wilbraham in terms of under excess capacity. We had about $1 million excess capacity, I think yours was $1.5 million on a much smaller budget. But we were kinda somewhere in the middle of the pack statewide, we weren't like, I thought we were doing much better than we were. But nevertheless, you still have to raise those taxes, so it's not an issue of, still gonna look at the residents and say, we need an extra X $100,000 or $1 million. I mean, if we go over $1 million, we would need to go to an override. And I've heard no discussion of that at all, and I can't imagine that coming up.
And that,
I might be wrong.
to me, that should be a campaign that starts. That should, if we're gonna do, if you were gonna ask for this, that should be a campaign that starts last year. Because it takes I think it takes a lot of time and a lot of convincing to get a 2.5 override. When you're already increasing it by 1.5 million, like we did last year, $1 million before. I mean, our average increase was 750,000, and your salary increase is 750,000. So it's hard to sell when you want to double, you were there, when you want to double the ask.
And honestly, we put some cost elements into the budget over the last few years. Strategic plan,
Yeah.
additional positions because of ESSER dollars. And I'm not saying those were the wrong things to do, but it's harder, I think, to go to the people and ask for an increase when you kind of forced it to increase. And I don't mean, I'm not trying to characterize it.
We're not gonna solve it tonight,
No.
but, you know, we've known the day was coming that we were gonna have to actually start paying for things again. And that day's arrived.
Did we come up with a next meeting
Dave,
date,
yeah, did you wanna
I'm
try
sorry.
the, February 12th, and
February 12th?
there's a I haven't heard back from Bill, I know we tentatively looked at the 12th of February, do you wanna do 5 o'clock, Doug, do you guys have your 6 o'clock back on the 12th?
Yeah, we'll be back at our 6 o'clock meetings.
Okay, so we could maybe clip it and do 5 o'clock
Do you want
finance
to
and
commit to the
operations.
12th and the
then
26th?
Or do we wanna go to the 7 o'clock on the 12th?
No, we
I'm
can't,
on
we
call
have
on the
to,
12th, so.
no, because Rich Rediker is gonna leave at 6 o'clock on the
Oh.
12th.
You're right.
Yeah, so we have to do 5 to 6.
Any
Doug
interest
has
in the
a 6 o'clock
13th?
meeting.
No, no, I understand, so just get you on the 12th.
Oh, so we're just keeping it on the 12th, okay, so keep the,
Do we, I mean, we could shoot for January 29th. Again, I might not have town numbers, but we'll have other
If nothing
stuff.
changes, there's no reason to meet.
yeah, it seems really.
That's
very
next
soon.
Monday.
Yeah, it seems very soon.
It does.
It
It
seems
seems to
like,
make sense also to meet after your meeting as well, but just.
well, I was
to
gonna
hear
say, it
feedback
seems to
after
me
that.
like this group needs to meet before you meet with the finance committee. So I can reach out to finance, and we're meeting Wednesday, and ask them, can we change, reshuffle our schedule, which we may be able to, I don't know that. But I think this group should meet again before you meet with finance.
Okay.
But I don't wanna push it too far into February. We need to get that done sooner versus later, so I don't know.
Mark, meeting before that tentative Wednesday the 7th meeting, you wanted this group to meet before that meeting?
I think it would be wise.
The 6th, we have a planning meeting, I believe,
5:30.
at 5:30.
What about on,
What
what
about the
about
first-
on Thursday the 1st, before the school committee meeting? Is there anything in that time slot? At 5:30 to
Or
6:30?
do,
I can do any
No,
time.
just to try to salvage the already scheduled spot with FinCom at 7
work for
on
you?
the 7th.
yeah,
The first?
I gotta check my business schedule, yeah, that's fine.
yeah, Bill, you and I are meeting the first anyhow, so you can hang out for that meeting if you want.
Alright.
We
Is that
could
what
do
you
this
think?
on-
February 1st at 5?
But it would be in this, is the only thing, it would be in the IRC, because we'd be
Doesn't matter.
That's fine.
set up to here.
Cool.
Does that work?
February 1st at 5.
5 o'clock?
5 o'clock in the IRC, Doug,
Sounds great.
at Minichog
Yeah.
Regional High School.
Yes, that's the,
I'm only saying out loud, because I'll never know where I am anymore.
that's the school term.
February 1st, 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock.
It's the first day of Black History Month.
Minichog Regional Middle
Yeah.
School
I
will also have
I
theirs.
ignore your alerts.
Show up my calendar.
Meeting alerts, totally alert, that's what I took one day, I was just
And
like, oh, I
find
know,
a
I
building
know.
that looks a
No,
lot
I
like the
didn't,
one
I
right
forgot.
next to it.
You have to ignore me if you keep calling.
And we said 5 o'clock to
Thursday the 1st, February 1st.
5 to 6, correct?
PM,
Yes.
right, not AM?
5 PM.
I can do either.
What is this committee called? No, I'm just kidding.
I don't know.
What do we call it?
I don't know. I can-
Should we do
Finance
it
and
early?
operations.
Can we just go February 1st?
I know.
5 o'clock.
Sean, I was forgetting.
So if we go a little over, that's okay, the school committee meeting doesn't start till 6:30.
Can't go over, Aaron needs to get set up for the end.
Yes. Well, we could do the meeting in the IRC that way.
We are doing it.
I thought we are doing it
We
now.
are.
do it
We'll do it in the IRC, we'll
John's
sit
on
at
an
the
interim
tables just
basis.
like they're set up for the school committee,
Yeah.
and it'll all be awesome.
No faces.
All right, I
May I
get
have
a motion.
to adjourn?
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, we are so adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Alrighty, hold on, we're on.